shift over to our next session, which is the business of IoT, working through regulatory oversight. If you're not in the Slack yet, it looks like Richard's already started a little bit of conversation over there. And with that, I will hand over to Richard Chang, who is an account executive for our major accounts at Particle.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and thanks, Lauren, for that introduction. My name is Richard Chang. As Lauren mentioned, I manage our key accounts here at Particle. These are our large and strategic accounts, and many of them deal in heavily regulated spaces. I know this is everyone's favorite topic, regulation, but a lot of our customers deal in transportation, energy, agriculture, and the environment. And so we've got some industry leaders with us today to discuss three major themes of playing in regulated spaces: how they win business through technology and differentiation, how they operate efficiently in those markets, and how they adapt to the changing landscape and maintain that competitive advantage. So I'm pleased to introduce our two panelists. Our first one joins us from the company B-Cycle, which is owned by Trek Bicycles, which you've seen on streets all over the world. Sean Peterson is the product director for B-Cycle, which provides shared bikes and e-bikes for communities in a sustainable, reliable way for communities to help them get moving. Thanks, Sean, so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And also joining us on our virtual stage is Mario Cruz. He's the CTO and director of Watsco Ventures. Watsco distributes and services air conditioners for homes across the United States. Every year, tens of thousands of HVAC units are sold and serviced by them. Mario was previously the head of product development at Vigil and CTO of Choose Digital, and I think has been on a few Particle stages before. Mario, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, gentlemen, you guys both represent industries that people are familiar with, or they think they are familiar with. A lot of people ride shared bikes. A lot of people buy air conditioners for their homes. I'd love to get a little bit more detail, a little more color in your own words. So maybe we'll start with you, Sean. Tell us about B-Cycle's mission, how you guys approach the mobility space different from other players.
Sure. Yeah, it starts with our mission, which is Trek's mission, our parent company. Our mission is to change the world by getting more people on bikes, and we in B-Cycle do that through bike share. And our mission encompasses providing reliable product. That would be what we call best-in-class bike share and docks, and also predictable product. Along the same lines, our product is meant to be shared bikes that are in docks for public use versus dockless. And also, we focus on having a simplified user experience. So the key there is that, or the uniqueness is that we are a dock-based bike share company, and we are dedicated to having that predictable, reliable bike share service.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I live in San Francisco, just across the street from one of these docked stations. And I think it just, especially for people who are relying on them for commuting, it makes more sense if you know that the docks are there. It's a little bit less guesswork that you don't need to check an app and kind of potentially be late for your meeting or for your workday. So thanks for sharing that. Mario, tell us a little bit about Watsco, their place in the HVAC space, and maybe a little bit about how technology has been a differentiator.
Yeah, I think Watsco itself has been on a mission for probably the last 12 years to sort of include technology and use technology to enhance not only the experience, but also the effectiveness of our employees and of our contractors. So we've used technology to help them and help us get better with parts and services, find out parts they need, to look at different ideas. And from there, we've done a lot of technology. They have mobile apps that support all the contractors. From there, we have better, really good e-com sites to help the contractors order these parts and find them without going to our branches. And then lastly, we started Watsco Ventures, which allows us to create new companies around sales proposal tools, fintech, helping contractors finance their customers. And then we started an IoT company called Sentry, and then now we have it under Alert Labs. And so the thing there was, how can we change how contractors service systems, but how also we can reduce truck rolls, reduce a lot of things around that space. And hopefully we'll talk about some of those things today, but really was how to make the people more efficient and effective with these tools for a very old business, right? At the end of the day, we sell HVAC units to contractors, and they install it at people's homes. How do we make them more efficient? How do we make them more knowledgeable? How do we empower them with a bunch of knowledge in their hands?
Awesome. Thank you. I first heard about Watsco, I think 4 years ago when I first joined Particle. It's one of the marquee customers that we talk about. And it was interesting to learn that, when air conditioner units, if they fail, it's en masse. Like you've got a heat wave and a bunch of units that were sort of on the brink of failure suddenly have issues. And people were describing, what the impact of that could be. It could be, aged care facilities or data centers. You could have somebody with breathing difficulties. So it's so important to make sure that, the uptime is there, that these machines are maintained, because it does have a big impact to both, end customers and potentially goods that need to be, stored and maintained in a certain way.
100%.
All right. So now that we've got the introductions done, I want to talk about our first theme for today, which is winning business in regulated markets. We'll start with you, Sean. We've seen, Particle has seen some pretty fierce competition in the bike sharing space and in the micromobility space. We know that cities are holding these open bids for a relatively small number of permits. And we've seen some anecdotes of cities asking for very different requirements, occasionally some unusual requirements. So we'd love it if you could share some of the challenges that B-Cycle has seen for these city permits and maybe how you guys have been successful.
Yeah, it comes back to my earlier comments and our mission, who we are, being a docked versus dockless. So what I mean by that is, we developed some new IoT technology with our new 3.0 dock that was meant to help with that predictability, that reliability, flexibility, and also helping to gather data within the cities. So that's the key for us, is the data. These cities require different data sets. A lot of it is required in a specific format called MDS, or Mobility Data Specification. So what that means is they want to know rider habits. They want to know about the rider, the ride routes. They want to know also about things such as where they could put stations, infrastructure planning. So it becomes a bit of a mixed bag when you go from city to city. The other aspect of this is we are in an industry that is not as heavily or well regulated as, say, automotive or aviation airline industries. So that requires us to really become educated with these cities, kind of on a journey with them. So the point there is that the biggest challenge we have is understanding what are the very specific pieces of data that they need in each city, and how can we accommodate that with our new IoT device, our 3.0 dock, and an IoT module we have in our e-bike. How can we pull that data and present that in a format to the city that's meaningful for them?
That's great. Any anecdotes you can share on, maybe insights that you've been able to share with the cities during the bid process that maybe they didn't know about their own kind of movement patterns, or maybe how they might want to, change dock placement, things like that?
Yeah, that becomes a very common conversation with cities when bidding. Even after being awarded the bid, we're always coming back and looking at strategic locations. So again, it becomes that partnership, that ambassadorship with the city to help them understand that, hey, that station location, while you had anticipated that you were going to have all of these riders coming out of, say, a sporting event and using that station, it wasn't the case. So we kind of guide them towards, let's take a look at some habits in your city, because not every city is going to have the same demographics, right? In San Francisco, for example, you're going to have riders that are facing a lot of hills, and so having e-bikes at the right locations at the bottom of those hills, that's going to be meaningful, versus here in Madison, Wisconsin. We don't have a lot of hills, but we do have a lot of lake loops. So we help the city understand that, hey, here's a route that your riders, like if they're tourists or maybe it's parents coming in for college day or college campuses visits, they're going to want stations at these locations. So just a couple examples, it varies. And we're across the country in 35 plus cities, everything from Florida to California to up here in Wisconsin to the Northeast. So yeah, that's some of the use cases that become unique for us, and just work with the cities on what will help them drive more ridership.
Sounds like a bit of a universal theme, but knowing your market, knowing your audience, and getting that local intelligence. I can see it being worthwhile sending out a scout team, have somebody ride a bike around the city, see where the assess where the bottlenecks might be, see where the common routes might be. I can also imagine that a lot of this data has gone a little bit upside down over the last 2 years as commuting patterns have changed, as people are returning to work. I'm sure a lot of the bids that you're going after with cities are looking at how do you make sure that you're flexible as return to work changes habits, as people start to have growth in certain areas. So I think a lot of that is probably making the bid process a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, the pandemic definitely changed the ridership habits in a lot of cities. To your point, people that were commuting through traditional methods previously, whether it's a bus or they're driving their own car, now working hybrid or remote, maybe going to the office 1 or 2 times. More riders now are either moving to locations that are conducive to that, or they're buying into bike share. They're getting full memberships and riding bikes more frequently. So we saw that here in Madison with the pandemic. We are considered to be kind of the last mile in shared mobility, bike share. We're seeing now more of it being not just the last mile, but maybe the last 3, 4, 5 miles, because of they only have to go in the office maybe 1 or 2 days versus every day of the week.
Yeah, and e-bikes certainly make it easier to cover that 3, 4 miles as opposed to just 1.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Mario, let's turn to you. Winning new business in a national kind of sales territory can get a little complicated, I'm sure. Different environmental regulations across the United States, different certifications that you have to deal with. Can you tell us a little bit about how that has impacted your ability to win in these markets?
Yeah, I think the first thing we'll start is, one of the biggest hurdles we had to go through is our UL certification, right? So we went to Particle to get all the FCC stuff done and get all the mobility stuff done and all the cellular stuff done, but we still had to get some UL certification, and we worked on that pretty hard. We have an amazing team, an Alert Labs on the product team, and we went actually to UL and spent 2 days with them and walked through that process. So that's one of the things we had to do, and it's one of the things you should think about when you're planning your product is. You have to sell these things, right? And you have to get these certifications, and it's UL or CE or one of those standards to basically add this to a system that already exists. So for us, we wanted to add these to HVAC units, so we had to have that certification, right? It's one of the things you have to have if you want to be added to those systems. And then, on the second flip side of that, the government now is changing SEER rating. So, and how do we do that? So in January 1st, 2023, there's anything called SEER 2. So how do we help now all our contractors with all these changes, right? The equipment changes, this process changes, it changes the way our app works, it changes some of the ways our things work. So internally, we have to be ready for those, right? So that's a change where the government's changing something, changing a standard that's affecting all the HVAC manufacturers and distributors. And then again, our customers, which is the contractors, how do they install this? What changes? What's new? How do you do calculations for SEER? How do you do all these things? Because in some homes, when you install an air conditioner, if you want the local rebate from the power company, you have to turn in some paperwork around the efficiency and AHRI, stuff like that. And so these things get complicated, and we built most of these apps for these customers, right? For them to settle all that and find all those things out.
Can I just dig in on that? You're telling me the end customer who owns a home and installs an air conditioner, if they want to get some rebate, they need to track the efficiency of their unit?
The contractor does that for them. And but see, our tools and our apps and IoT device, those are things that help do those things, right? So effectively, So if you're using one of our apps or using one of our sales tools like On-Call Air, we want to be able to match that system and get you the right AHRI and SEER. So an AHRI is like a certificate that says that these two systems do produce this SEER rating, right? So
energy efficiency, it's a stamp.
It's a stamp, right? Okay. And so those are the things that are changing drastically in less than 300 days, like 220 days, So the whole industry is changing in 220 days. And so those are things that we do today to help our contractors, right? So we help that in our mobile apps. We help that with people on the counter. We help that with a product called Wingman. So those are things that we do today. We create technology to help our contractors help solve that. So when you go to the home and the consumer asks them that, the homeowner, they're not, I don't know, right? They never want to have that answer. So we're going to provide all the tools, all the technology, all the products possible to make sure they have that answer.
Yeah, that this brings us to our second theme, which is how do you operate efficiently in these regulated markets? It sounds like you said January of next year is when something's changing.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how much advance notice do you guys get to prepare for that big change in the industry?
Well, the funny thing is you have a lot of advanced notice. I think we had probably about 2 years, but
Okay.
the equipment isn't around yet, right? So it's coming. The government says there's changes, but we have to wait for the manufacturers to start implementing that. And so your timetable gets squeezed because you have to wait for the manufacturers to produce that. You have to wait the manufacturers to get that to you for testing. And then you add COVID to all this, and you add supply chain delays, you add all those things in this process. And so those are the things that sort of make people worried, right? And make the contractor worried. They're scared that this new system that'll come out, the new regulations are going to be totally different. Are they have to retrain their staff? Those are things that, a lot of these things change. And this is what Watsco does. This is our bread and butter. We help our customers navigate these things. We help our customers solve these problems. We help our customers. We train our customers. We give them the products. So these are the things that we do with technology today to make that possible, right? Because we might not have all the answers today, but as soon as we get the answers, we know how to put that in the field. We know how to put that in our mobile apps. We know how to put that in all our other technologies out there to help that contractor, right? Those are the things that, the government said it was changing it, but manufacturers didn't start working on this till beginning of 2 years ago. Then obviously pandemic hit and everything slowed down, equipment supplies slowed down. So everybody had that same squeeze. So we're hoping to see these products shortly to start figuring them out. I personally haven't seen any of those products yet. So I talked to manufacturers about it, but I have not seen one yet.
Got it. It sounds like you guys are, maybe 75% of the way through adapting your existing product to this new standard. But I'm curious about that moment when the regulations changed and kind of gave you a new set of requirements. This is probably, it sounds like, a year plus ago that a new set of kind of Tier 2 regulations came out. Can you tell me about that moment where, suddenly the bar was raised and you had to start looking at those requirements? How much effort is it going to be? Are we going to need to change hardware, software? Are we going to need to redesign our product entirely? Tell us about that moment where you had to change your product.
I think one of the few things we started working on is seeing how the requirement affects our obviously our customer, which is a contractor, right? And so I just talked about this AHRI thing. So about 4 years ago, we created technology to allow them to do that pretty simply, right? So they use one of our apps, they pick the two systems, and we give them the AHR rating. If you use our e-com sites and you order from us directly, we do that, some of those matches for you. So you can pre-bundle systems, and you don't have to worry about that at all. So those are areas where that's changing drastically. So we've already started working on that area, right? On how that's going to work and how that math is going to work. It's believe it or not, there's a lot of math involved there, some machine learning involved in there for us to do those across all the SKUs. Because if you think of what Watsco does, all our subsidiaries sell HVAC units, they sell complete units. But if you go and you're just repairing one of the systems outside, right, we have to match that with an inside unit, right? And so those are the things that we have to have every permutations of every outside unit and every inside unit, right? So those are things like that's an area where we say we've been working on already. But there's other areas where it's, our data, we have rich data, which is the pictures and what's the parts and how many parts are inside that system. So you can walk up to an air conditioner today with one of our apps, scan it or look up that serial number. We'll tell you all the parts. We'll tell you all the parts that are inside of it. If the part number changed or got superseded, we'll tell you what the new superseded number is. We'll tell you if we have it close to you and what it costs, and you can purchase it and almost Uber it to you if you wanted to, right? Or pick it up and drive up to one of our locations to pick it up. So those are the areas where all these changes by the manufacturer is going to change that also, right? We have all this new hardware coming in and all these new technologies coming in and all this. Again, for us, it's our rich data, it's our pictures, it's understanding every component in that system. Because again, your system breaks and you got to go out there and then what's that part, right? You want to be able to pick that part and say, this is the part I need. It's a blower for XYZ. Do I have that? I'm going to tell you, hey, here's how much it costs. We'll be back with the part today or first thing tomorrow morning with that part. I just put the order in. I'm going to go pick it up after the next job and then put it in the morning, right? That's what you want to hear from your contractor, right? Especially when you're hot, like we said earlier, or you're cold, right? Those are the things where you want to have that sort of predictability, and our tools are allowing the contractor to have that predictability.
Got it. The one last thing I wanted to ask you about on this topic is hazardous chemicals is something that I used to hear about in terms of HVAC. You've got Freon or whatever that needs to be replaced and disposed of. Is this something that is an operating burden or a compliance burden that you guys need to help your contractors handle?
We are helping our contractors handle it today, but most of the contractors today have to be certified to handle refrigerant, right? So they have to reclaim it, they have to recycle it. Those are things that are happening today, and I think, I mean, my personal opinion, and so I'm going to talk about my personal opinion, not for the companies, but I think that's going to change drastically because as more refrigerant comes out, there'll be more ways to handle this, and there'll be more products. And then, I mean, Watsco, we're big on ESG, right? And so we're trying to lower that carbon emission. We're trying to lower the refrigerant loss. We're trying to get more efficient systems out there, right? All these things are part of our mission to do those things. So we'll continue to look at adding technology or services to help contractors in those areas.
Awesome, thank you. Sean, let's go back to you and talk about the operating challenges of running a bike share business. You mentioned MDS, and I know that cities have different requirements for reporting and sharing data. Can you talk about some of the ways in which you operate more efficiently with all the cities that you work with?
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial to identify our customer is the city, but also acknowledging that when it comes to operations in these cities, that the cities themselves don't operate the system. They don't maintain the fleets. That's done through an operator. So for our audience, when I talk about operations and an operator, the operator is our primary customer. That is the team of individuals on the ground in the city, making sure the bikes they work, no flat tires. They're checking in and out of the docks. So, as I mentioned previously, with that data, the operators are the ones that we want to help be successful. So we want to make sure their day-to-day operations are as seamless as possible. So how we do that with IoT, one example is we have a Bluetooth module on our e-bike, and that's the first version of it was a particle xenon board. And what that does is it transmits data from the e-bike to a kiosk where there's a modem in that kiosk, and that transmits that data to a back-end software platform, one that we have developed for our customers. It's a custom back-end software platform that they can take a look at really the status of the battery on that bike. Does it need to be charged, replaced? So some other examples that are along the same lines of IoT technology for us, and some of the complications we've had is that data, getting that data out that's out there in the field back into that software platform. Traditionally or previously, we were using a LTE network. We're using modems out there in a kiosk, and modems that are on a 2G, 3G, 4G LTE network. And that's worked great. But for our use case, along with that comes with a lot of cost. We're paying for a very broad band of data traffic that we don't need. Our events are small events. So switching over to IoT technology, that helped us really reduce costs in transferring data. These are small events, small data packets, machine to machine communication. So that was another thing that when we developed the 3.0 dock, we took that into consideration, that we don't need that wide band of data, and going to a narrow band Cat M1 connection really helped that.
Got it. Okay. So I'm curious, the operators that you talk about, are those often city employees, public employees, or is that also going out to a bid for third-party shops to bid on that?
Yeah, good question. The majority of them are nonprofits that are contracted to the city, that are sometimes a separate bid process. Sometimes we are entering into a formal bid with an operator, city of Philadelphia. We may partner with a local nonprofit, and we're submitting our bid together. We're providing the turnkey fleet hardware and the software platform. They are going to maintain the system in the city. So the majority of it is typically a nonprofit. There's some creative ones out there where, like a bike co-op, they could be a nonprofit bike shop, and they also help the city by maintaining the fleet. So, but mainly nonprofits.
Got it. That's interesting. And I'm imagining the operators have a certain set of reporting and data needs around redistributing bikes, maintaining bikes, knowing ridership, and then the end customer, the city, may want to know environmental impact, may want to know, traffic patterns of where people are going, so they can plan public transit routes and the like. Is one or more of these kind of reporting requirements more burdensome for you?
It can be. So our back-end portal that receives all this data, right? We have these IoT devices pulling the data, routing it through the cloud back into our back-end. We have had to build out over 10 years a reporting structure that fits our customers' needs. So it's a bit of an a la carte. To your point, you're the city of Des Moines. You don't need a robust report to know, all of these diagnostics. You only have a fleet of, say, 100 e-bikes, where Los Angeles has a fleet of 1,500. They're going to need some much more extensive reporting because their system is scaled geographically, and also their demographics are vary. And then you have places, as I mentioned, like in Fort Lauderdale, where you have coastal climates and you have saltwater conditions. You're going to see deterioration of equipment that requires a different type of reporting. But again, the point there is IoT technology has allowed us to traffic that data in a much more efficient manner. And then we use things like Microsoft IoT Hub, which is great because it helps us maintain that smart connection. And then we also use Microsoft Service Fabric, and that's great because we scale with our devices. We are adding e-bikes in all these cities, and Microsoft Service Fabric really helps us just scale easily with these new devices that are communicating through it.
Got it. So you've got a separate set of tools in the cloud, analytics tools that will help you customize the different slice of data that different cities, different regions might want to see because of the size of their fleet, because of environmental considerations. And I assume that means that you can do a lot of that customization on the cloud and data side and not at the bike hardware side, which is obviously much harder to do to change what's physically on the devices.
Yeah, one drives the other. The data drives the need for hardware upgrades, right, or hardware updates. If we're seeing, issues, failures, that become scaled, then we take that data and that translates to, hey, we need to fix this widget on the bike or fix this widget in the dock. The other thing I'll say that, how this really helps with regulations is, again, these cities, it's a bit new to all of us. We're not in that heavily regulated space, but we all recognize that we want to have some shared goals or guidelines to get to that regulation. So this is building that historical database, right? That we're going to have this knowledge that can be used to establish, here are some general requirements and or compliance requirements in these cities.
Yeah, it's been fascinating over the last, say, 3 years working at Particle and seeing the evolution of the micromobility space. And some of the cities have taken such drastically different approaches. Some of them have said no shared mobility, period. Citing studies that they wanted to do and safety and all that. And some have just said, go nuts. We've dropped, tens of thousands of e-scooters onto the streets of San Diego or Paris, and, things will work themselves out. I think we're finally starting to see some maturation in terms of what the cities will allow, the permitting process, the bidding process. I don't think it's quite stabilized yet, but it has been fascinating to see how drastically some cities have been battleground states for micromobility. All right, so we've talked a little bit about how to win business in regulated markets. We've talked about operating in those markets and how to be efficient with the reporting and compliance burdens. The last of these three themes that I wanted to talk about was being flexible and adapting to these changing regulations. So, obviously, once you've just deployed tens of thousands of units in the field, would love to hear some examples of how you guys have had to adapt to changing regulatory needs. Mario, maybe we'll start with you. Oh, I guess we've spoken a little bit about the SEER2 rating and going for tracking the different data. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you intend to, there's a large existing fleet of Watsco HVAC devices out there, and you can't go out and change the hardware that's on these, at least not easily. How are you thinking about, retrofitting or OTA updating that fleet to either meet the changing regulations or coming close?
Yeah, I think I mean, one of the reasons where we are with Particle is for that OTA update, right? That seamless OTA update. So one of the things we look at is as things change, right? This is something we talk about as regulations change, and as we get into different areas, as we get into how do we provide more efficiency information to the contractor and to the homeowner, and how do we add these things? These are new things that we're going to add based on things that happen in not only regulatory environments but just the regular environment. Folks are more concerned about our environment. They want to be more helpful in how they can change things today, right? And so these are things we can do on the fly over the air, right? So looking at that, and then again with fleet management, you can pick a set of customers and say, hey, we're going to test this set of customers, a set of systems, and that's some of the cool things that we can do through your systems, right? Is we're going to pick 50 customers and say, hey, we're going to put this in private beta. These are things we're looking at. Do some over the air updates and be able to leverage that pretty quickly, right? And so at our team at our Labs with Sentry does that every day, right? When they're talking to contractors, the contractors say, hey, we really want this extra thing we want, right? It's something we haven't heard of, right? So we might take some of his fleet and say, let's try this and test this and see if this is feasible, right? Let's see if we have the right data from the sensors, let's see if we have the right information. And this is how we continue to evolve our product. At the end of the day, we're not going to be HVAC experts, right? Just like we're not cellular experts. That's what we have Particle, right? Our HVAC experts are our customers. They know a lot more in some of the spaces than we do. So they'll come to us and say, here's the thing we want to have in the system. Can you add this? And then we'll work with them, our products team, out of our Labs, we'll work with them on that for the HVAC. Same thing on the water side. I mean, we have water products that do the same thing where we're working with huge property managers are saying, we're saving hundreds of gallons a month for some of these folks, and that's first of all, it's cost, but secondly, it's saving the environment. Water becoming a commodity, right? So these are things where these products can change not only for the contract and for our users, not only the price, but also helping them with their customers on how the environment, it looks at the environment. So if you go out to watchco.com/environment, we'll show you what we've saved on the water side. We'll show you what we've saved on on CO2 emissions, right? We're tracking that for everybody now, and we want to do that hopefully in the future, we'll do that at a customer level, right? Yeah. So we'll tell you how much CO2 you're saving by using our products and doing things more efficiently, or how much you're not, right? And time to upgrade that system, or time to do that service call. These are the things that we can do with IoT is how can we take these new standards, how can we take these new measurements and all this math we're producing and now applying to these things and change our products, right, in the field without, again, like you said, they've already been installed, they're already paying a subscription for it. How much more value can we give them for that subscription that they're paying for? If they're using us for water or they're using us for HVAC, right? That becomes a big thing. And it becomes bigger when it's, again, like a co-op or a rental property or a bunch of rental properties or, multifamily homes or, or low-income housing. How do we have those folks save on water and save on HVAC, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how much people, I'm obviously glad that environmental responsibility is something that a lot of organizations and companies and families are looking to prioritize when they make purchasing decisions of all sorts. And I think about when you walk into a shopping mall or a office building and you see out front LEED certified or whatever the environmental stat is, or even we just saw Charlie from Salesforce in the last presentation describe his company in terms of number of trees planted or saved. That didn't happen 10, 20 years ago. No. So it's great. And I'm glad to hear that, perhaps not surprisingly, that your customers are willing to participate in these pilots of, hey, let's beta a new feature, see if it can get energy savings, see if it can get water savings. It's great that you've got that avenue to continue to improve and to continue to reduce that environmental footprint.
Yeah, and again, and now we're publishing that on our website. So if you go out to watchco.com and you go to environment, all that's out there for folks to see.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I did want to touch on one topic, which is edge logic. So we talked about this a little bit in one of the prep sessions of sort of patents that Watsco has achieved and increasing the amount of business logic is one of the high value ways that you guys use the OTA updates. Can you tell us a little bit, without giving away the secret sauce, can you tell us a little bit about how you guys approach that?
Well, it becomes things around, we started early on with Particle, right? So we've grown with you. We've been Particle probably more over 7 years now. So as that chip has become more powerful, we're able to do more things on that chip today, right? And we do some cryptographic stuff. So I like today that, they're adding cryptographic stuff to the chips this morning when Zach talked. But we're doing more cryptographic stuff on that chip around our data, around our information, around some math calculations that we're going to do there, which makes it easier to, so instead of having to send it back and digest it, we're doing some things there. And again, as the chip becomes more powerful and as bandwidth becomes cheaper, we'll be able to do more and more there, right? So this morning, you talk about 4 megs. That's a lot more space to do stuff on these systems moving forward, right? On these new systems coming out from Particle. So as the hardware gives us more power, we're going to do more things at the edge, right? Because maybe your subscription runs out, or maybe we have an offline version of this where maybe we put a set of lights or a set of gauges or something that then you can pay to get that information, right? Think of it like as a Carfax for an HVAC, right? You bought the house that has one of these systems, call us and we'll tell you how that system, the year, how many times it's been maintained. Those are things that we could do, right? In the future, hopefully, with having all this edge computing.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear this. And you said something really, I thought insightful in our prep session a few weeks ago that I'd like to repeat, which is that, the software value that you guys continue to put into your product is how you maintain your advantage in the market. Yeah. As connectivity becomes cheaper, as it becomes easier for competitors to put a microcontroller and a cellular module on their chip, your competitive advantage is software differentiation, business rules, protected IP.
Yeah, as Zach, as your team of product guys come up with products that help people get here faster, we need to continue working on that software to have that edge, right? We need to, in IoT, in mobile, and in inside our stores, right? These are things that we're looking more and more into IoT inside our stores, right? So these are things we have to continue innovating on to make sure that we stay ahead.
Awesome. Sean, coming back to you, adapting to the changing regulatory landscape. We've talked about how much in the last 2 years, even the regulatory landscape has changed. Can you talk a little bit about how B-Cycle has had to be flexible and adapt to any big changes in the market?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one that both you and Mario mentioned, and that's over-the-air updates. And that's not only important for working with your customers to pilot product. We do the same thing. We can provide them OTA for updates for features and functionality. But the other side of that OTA allows us to do is stay current with board level components as well. We are working with Cat M1 connection, and that's a specific modem, and no different than your smartphone or your PC. There's always updates that are running in the background. Well, we utilize the OTA to make sure our board level components are being kept up to date. The other part of it for us that we've had to adapt to is, again, the data that these cities want, specifically real-time data. And what I mean by that is, if for those of you that are familiar, real-time kinematic positioning. So that would be similar to GPS locations, but real time. So for those of you that have iPhones, you may use the Find My app, and you can sometimes see on there, oh, look, I used to track my kids. You can see your kids like literally moving down the sidewalk as he's walking. And that's RTK, it's giving you that real time location. So we've had to adapt our product, really move up into that space of providing real time positioning for our bikes out in the wild. So the cities know that, hey, that bike is crossing over a border where we don't want bikes to be ridden. And that's the next level of technology that we are integrating. And that is, how do we now notify that rider that, hey, you're entering an area that is a no ride zone, so to speak. And we're seeing more and more of this as a requirement for cities. If you are going to bid for bike share or shared mobility in the city of blank, you need to provide real-time positioning and real-time data. So that's one that probably our biggest one that we are now adapting.
Wow. Do you think that's as a result of, more of these bikes being taken out of, into cellular dead zones or underground? Is it because of a lack of reliable GNSS in some scenarios?
Partially, I believe it's more so just rider habits. There's two parts. They want to make sure riders are respectful, and rider habits meaning, this is a park that's no bike paths. It's meant to be no bikes going through it, or green space, for example. We have one customer that had a greenway that they did not want any electric assist bikes. They would have classic bikes, but no electric assist. So we're working on how do we essentially turn off the electric assist automatically as they enter the area, and then when they leave that area, it brings the electric assist back on, all the while making sure the rider is not, surprised being thrown off by the motor kicking on and off. The other part of that is helping cities develop infrastructure. So, having that real-time data location and seeing where people are riding, they can use that for city planning, right? Safer streets,
Right.
dedicated bike lanes. Again, it all comes back to that ridership data, but specifically real-time data.
And has some of this been, which we're talking about adaptability, has any of this been reflected in sort of OTA updates into the fleet, of your current fleet of bikes to get, different accuracy or more frequent publishing? Or is this something that's planned for maybe a future release?
This is in the planning right now. Right now we can do that, but it's a plug and play, essentially plugging into the bike and adjusting that functionality. So it's in development right now for that feature of, for example, how do we limit the speed, work with the cities, we call them geofencing in those locations where, bikes are either not allowed or no e-assist bikes are allowed.
Got it. Well, that seems like a more reasonable and actionable requirement than some of the things that we were hearing, 2 years ago. I recall in the early days of the e-bike, in the e-scooter deployments, that there was one city that was requiring turn signals on all of their scooters. I don't think that actually became reality, but it was maybe an example of some of the immature experimentation between some of the fleet operators and the municipalities. I'm glad those days are a little bit behind us.
I am as well.
We've just got maybe a couple minutes left. I wanted to ask, either of you gentlemen, if there's advice that you would give to other firms, across industries in our audience that are looking to make progress in these regulated spaces. Any words of wisdom you'd share with them?
Yeah, I can just jump in real quick. For us and relating to working with public entities, municipalities, cities, it really becomes an ambassadorship. You want to work with them. Again, our space is not heavily regulated, but nonetheless, you're on this journey together. So work with them and understand also that changes aren't going to happen overnight. That's probably the biggest advice I would give if you are working with public entities. Just some patience and understand that you're going to have to partner to work through some unknowns.
Yeah.
And just add to what Sean said. Make sure that you leave space for these changes. These things are going to come your way. You better have them in your roadmap as things that you will have to account for, right? And so these are things that are like don't have them be got yet. You know that something will change or something will come in or some sort of environmental change will happen that you have to be able to react fast enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to the kind of evolving landscape in the micromobility space, I think, the early days, people tried to act kind of dismissing the concerns of the cities. Let's put our vehicles on the streets and see what happens. And I think some hard lessons were learned. And now, Particle and myself, we agree, of course, with the sense of, hey, you need to work with these public entities. It's a partnership that you need to invest in to make sure that you have these positive working relationships, because they can turn off the spigot, they can stop you from operating, they can withhold permits, and all of that is, potentially damaging to the business. So with that, I think we're at the top of the time. I wanted to thank both of you for sharing your stories. Great examples of how both of you have leveraged technology to win in these regulated markets and operate efficiently and adapt to make sure that you're continuing to operate and grow in these markets. And I like that tidbit about, being patient, working with the regulatory bodies to make sure that you're continuing to be successful. Before we let you go, I just wanted to make a quick plug. I think, Sean, you had mentioned that B-Cycle is hiring and looking for maybe some embedded engineers.
Yeah. If you're like what you see and you want to know more, we are hiring an embedded firmware engineer on the B-Cycle team here. So reach out through LinkedIn. Be happy to hear from you or someone you know looking for to join a pretty innovative industry.
Sounds great. Sounds great. And Mario, I suspect you are also looking for embedded engineers.
Yeah. So
generally.
Go to watchco.com or alertlabs.com, or you can chase me. I'm on the Slack for the event.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you, gentlemen, so much.